That is yeah, great. We now heard recording in progress. That is the first seminar that organized by ZDM Mathematics Education. And the next webinar will be based on the special issue on emotions and motivation in mathematics education. And it will be held on March 15. I will send in the chat the announcement. So if you like to join the second one, you are allowed to do it, and you are very welcome. Today we'll start with survey and introduction to the theme by Johann Engelbrecht and Marcella Borber, followed by original contributions from perspectives of mathematical modeling, flipped classroom pedagogy, and teacher education under international perspectives. Now about the procedure of the webinar. All presenters can share their screen with the audience. This is the first one. The second part is very important. I would like to ask the presenters paying attention to the time. I will announce when 1 minute is left before the end of the presentation. And again, I will announce when the time is over. The audience is very welcome asking questions in the chat. Then we will try to pick up during the discussion. Now, Johann, you have 15 minutes and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Stanislav and everybody. Let me just get my screen going. While Jody is helping me here with sharing the screen, I need to say that this first slide that I show you have photographs of the three of us, as you can see, Gabrielle at some stage asked for attractive people. Now, the
attractive names.
That's how she explained it afterwards, attractive names. And I have to confess that although both of my colleagues are attractive and have attractive names, I am more attractive than my reputation. So if we can, we have to go back one.
Now in the presentation mode, Johann, and then it should be fine.
Sorry, can we go back? Yeah, this issue has 17 papers, including the survey paper on which I will speak a little, and my colleague Marcelo as well. And then 16
Johann,
papers.
we are still seeing 4 slides. 2 are gray, and it is, I have no idea what it is, but it's not the presentation in the right mode.
Yeah, Johann, do you want me to show the slides?
Yes, Marcelo, can you go ahead? I guess that puts less stress on Johann.
Okay, so you're not seeing the right slides?
No, but now you'll see the slides and you just tell me when you want me to move until it's my time to talk.
Go, next one. Okay, next one. Yes, 17 papers. No. And including the survey paper, and then 16 papers on these 3 topics: the mathematical background, which explains the mathematics of COVID that developed through COVID and modeled the COVID pandemic, the social and societal and psychological consequences, and then ideas and empirical results on the change of mathematics education. Of course, we did not answer all these questions. That would be impossible, but we tried to address some of these issues, and some of these authors writing these 16 papers, I can assure you, are also attractive. So I will move now to the discussion of our paper, and we asked the question, one back, please, Marcelo, yes. Will we ever teach mathematics again in the way we did before the pandemic? Which is quite a relevant question. Okay, next one. Marcelo. We looked at the transition in the pedagogy, pre-COVID pedagogy, and you will notice there that I colored the words that look good in green and those that are sort of disadvantaged in red. So we had face-to-face with some wonderful advantages, but also some disadvantages, including the push approach, the prominent role of the teacher. It was very much teacher-centered. But then good things were the personal relations that we had with our students and the fact that we could have physical group work. We go to the next one. During the pandemic, we used a term that was coined pedagogy, or emergency remote teaching was a very popular term during that time. We moved mostly online with some advantages and some problems, which we will mention some of them. It was much more student-centered. So it was a student-pull approach in that students decide how they want to learn, even in some instances, what they want to learn. They could access multiple resources, and the collaboration took place through social media and other internet platforms. But one thing that did happen, it was very impersonal. And we will get back to that. Could we have the next slide? So the big question is now the post-COVID pedagogy. What is going to happen now? What is the impact on how we teach? On the short term, some teachers now have returned to conventional face-to-face approach. Other teachers became spoiled with having to teach so few classes. They use a hybrid approach. But next slide. But if we look at the longer term, technology really provides a way to improve our communication and the whole learning process. And some great new educational technologies are creating environments where students can really be in charge of their own learning. I think, Marcelo, you're going to take over now. Are you? That's my handsome friend from Brazil.
Thank you very much, Johan, for your words about my physical shape. But in any case, thank you, Stanislao and Gabriel, for organizing this webinar. And thank you, Gabriel and Johan, for this long-term collaboration that had resulted in many special issues and books and papers, chapters, and everything else. And we are here together with this idea of putting together digital technology with printed paper, with PDF paper, which is also, I would say, a result of of the pandemic. So as you can say, we're doing some kind of blending here too. It's not Scotch, as I like to have with Johan whenever we meet, but it's like this blended of talking about papers and talking about different ideas. So we're doing a webinar about a printed journal and all that. This was already a trend before the pandemic, but it did get to a new level. We did get educational videos. I myself have this project of mathematical videos made by students and teachers, and which are somehow changing the classroom. So we are all in this big move during the pandemic. As Johan had briefly mentioned, social media has all kind of different possibilities. And in one version of the PowerPoint, but he cut this line here, I have said that it's also very problematic now because students do not use Facebook anymore, even though we do have all these numbers about Facebook. So they went to Instagram, but Instagram is hard to do education. And many of them are on TikTok. And we keep having this division among different social media. But yes, social media became even more important during the pandemic. And as we very well know, made the owners of the social media very rich increasing the social inequality in the world. We do have all this preference by students, and somehow different social media capture the imagination of students, and we all really using that. So if you don't have social media, sometimes it's very hard for you to find your students, especially during the pandemic when you could not go to the university or to school. I had the pleasure to announce on a parenthesis here that yesterday I finished my first doctoral seminar fully face-to-face at Unesp, at the State University of São Paulo, completely face-to-face, fantastic, with real coffee break and things like this. So in any case, back to this, to our special issue, we do, many platforms get developed. Google itself had to develop a lot its classroom, which was very awkward, and it still have many problems. And many platform teams and whatever get development, and that was good for us. But I've been talking and with Johan and with George Gadanides, with Ricardo Escocuglia from Brazil, and Monica Villarreal, who is here, about the changing classroom. We cannot have this idea of a cubic classroom anymore. So now we have all this, you know, that we have computer room, we have our bedroom, our lounge, and whatever. By the way, you have my former dining room. Would never be a dining room anymore, even now that I don't have that many books over here, but we do have, you know, it's an office. It already has a printer right next to the wine cellar, but anyways, it's this kind of combination. And this brings the main point that I would like to do in this part, and I did in other papers on educational studies in here, is the increase of social inequality has been really important for education and for math education. So not everyone has this condition. Good internet, let's pray, keeps like this, and, you know, a private room for doing a webinar, but this could be a classroom. So in any case, I just think that we have more and more, we have to work on the end of social inequality, on democracy, which is at risk in Europe and in Brazil and elsewhere, with many extreme right-wing wanting to finish democracy and things like this. So this is not anymore another kind of discussion. We do have to be bringing this all together. Having home for everyone and having internet for everyone is as important as we say here in Brazil to have food for the kids, because if the kids get to school and have not been fed, how can they learn? So we have to talk more and more about the mathematics of the pandemic. We have to be thinking about how is our curriculum going to be the same? Should we not be teaching kids from very early age how to count exponentially, you know, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and then backwards, so they can understand better the way the rich is getting richer, the poor is getting poorer, and the way virus just can be transmitted in exponential way. So this is the kind of thing that maybe I think we're starting to present in this special issue, but much more we are thinking that a lot of research will be necessary to this. We're soon going to have the ICMI symposium on social ecological issues, which I think it's somehow important for this discussion we're doing here, as you can see in this slide of this PowerPoint here. We must use the research background that myself and many others here have on digital technology to be making mathematics somehow algebraically can be just for a few, but maybe graphically could be extended to many more. And maybe if they see the sigmoid and the derivative of the sigmoid and a family of sigmoids and the derivatives of them, they could understand why it was important to be at home at some point until we had vaccine and other things like this. So we should be somehow thinking about all these kind of issues. And as we mentioned before, there are other special issues like this one on educational studies, our journal, our cousin journal, and things like this. We should be paying attention that somehow we became much more important during the pandemic. We somehow, as mathematicians, were able to connect modeling to biology and to social issues in a way that now we should not lose these. We should be changing the social image of mathematics, and we should be approaching this kind of problem. I think it's time, even though you're really enjoying my part of the talk, the Brazilian English, it's time to go back to South African English, Africana English. Back to you, Johan.
Thank you, Marcelo. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Marcelo did the substance, the important stuff of this talk. But if we get to the social issues, I think one issue that is addressed by many psychologists is the fact that the isolation caused some serious problems. Now, you know, I don't know if you've read the book by Harari called, Homo Sapiens, Brief History of Humankind. It's a lovely book, which I strongly recommend. And it gives us a history of the development of mankind. Now, there were a number of Homo species. I listed a few of them there on the top right-hand of the screen. And many of those species, they were bigger than we were. They had bigger brains, but sapiens survived. And I think most of us are still sapiens because they could gossip. Maybe Marcelo is bigger than I am and bigger than Gabriel, but if Gabriel and I join forces, we gossip and we get together, we can beat him. And that's why sapiens survived. So sapiens survived because it's
Johan, I'm sorry, you have 1 minute left.
I have 1 minute left. Thank you. That's why this is a serious issue that has to be addressed. Can I have the next slide, Marcelo? So, to summarize, if we could choose, we would probably not have done it this way. It was too sudden. Next slide, Marcelo. But perhaps we did need a push from behind to change the way that we were teaching. And the educational experiences that we had during COVID can help teachers to grow. It also provides new opportunities for research. Next slide, Marcelo. So to get back to the question, will we ever teach mathematics again the way we used to? Well, no. But there are too many things that happen during COVID that we would like to build on. Now, just to conclude, you saw that nice picture of the lions, and I'm finishing now, Stanislav. You can, I like this quote with the lions. These are African lions, and this quote, you're never going to be a lion, but that's all right, as long as you can act like one when you need to. But right now, as a zebra among the group of lions, when the lions see you, they start to think about lunch. And you're not a guest, you're on the menu. Next slide. So if you're not at the messages, if you're not at the table, you could be on the menu. And if we don't speak up on what are we going to do with mathematics education now, these decisions may be made by others. Now, if these others are the students, I'm happy because the students like to run their own learning. But if these are the education administrators, we may have to teach mathematics that we do not like. I'm done, Stanislav. Sorry, I know you're having trouble with us old people who know how to begin speaking, but have a problem to stop.
Johan, Marcelo, thank you very much for this presentation. I remind all participants that they should pay attention to turn off their microphones, otherwise it might be disturbing. Onam, if you can, please turn off your microphone. And now I would like to open the discussion. We have 10 minutes for discussion, and perhaps someone had a question regarding this interesting issue that Marcelo and Johan presented today.
Or maybe we should just go for the presentation.
I tried to raise my hand. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I cannot find. I've done everything I could to find the integrated camera, and I can't. I just can't. I think that I would love to have this, to be able to repeat what Johan and Marcelo have said, because we're back to square one of about 300 years ago. We want students to learn mathematics, which can help change the world for better. And this is mathematics for something. It's not mathematics as a goal per se. How would I say that in English? Mathematics with its own objective being new mathematics. That is necessary. But students in high school and university need mathematics. Those who do not want to be mathematicians need mathematics to solve problems, to solve their problems, to understand what's happening, to understand what's happening with politics, with democracy, with everything. This is what we have to teach. And it is true that people can be isolated, but also they can share much more information because of the media. And there are two people sitting in a table, both are using their telephones, and we think, oh, they're losing such a chance to talk. But maybe they're both on a webinar. And so they have much more people than one table can contain, whatever, Professor Johan, is on the menu.
Thank you for this comment.
May I respond? Thank you, Yoni. I think it's good to see you, Yoni. The issue of isolation, let me tell you, my grandchildren, they love going on holiday and they never want to go to school. But after COVID, they were looking forward to going back to school. And that is not a single situation. That's not an isolated situation. These kids were looking forward to seeing their friends again. So yes, about the mathematics that you were speaking about, Yoni, I think COVID helped us to decide better on what new curricula should look like. But as for the isolation, I think the solution does not lie in entirely online. We need to find some balance between face-to-face and online. But that is for all of us to comment on and to try to find out in the next few years.
Thank you very much.
Comment too, Stanislaw, or you don't have time?
We have another question in the chat. So if it's okay, because we have not so many time, so perhaps it's another topic there. And Gilbert Grefrath asked the question, unfortunately, the pandemic has lasted a long time and may not be over yet. So the impact on mathematics education has also changed in the course of the pandemic. Are there any findings on this?
Well, I think there are findings in this special issue, in other special issues, and talking about, and UNESCO have done many studies showing that maybe it's going to take up to 43 years for us to get to some kind of same level of understanding mathematics the way people from the same age did before the pandemic. Those of you who are back to face-to-face teaching know that students now have different kind of difficulties that they used to have. And I would add to this, the point that I want to emphasize is that now we got to make sure that in every poor neighborhood, there is good internet, because every teacher thinks that their students have access to internet to go to Google something, or at least to have that basic information. And so it's very important that we have programs for this in every country, and that we have ways of working with this, of connecting homes. Maybe the architecture of homes, if we go to a more blended way with the next pandemic, the next possible pandemic, or with global warming, we're gonna have to change the design of homes so they do have a place for kids to study, and you still have the other still have place for the other things that we used to do at home. Over.
Thank you, Marcelo. I will ask Bill to ask perhaps the last questions of this discussion. Then we move on to the next presentation.
Your microphone is not on, Bill.
On it again. Thank you, and sorry. I think Johan mentioned one phrase or question: what kind of mathematics should we be teaching?
We do not hear.
Pandemic? Could you cannot hear that?
I can
Yes.
hear well.
We can hear you.
Okay,
I
okay.
Hear you.
Could you expand a little bit on the possibility of different mathematics being needed post the pandemic?
Should I go or should you go, Johan?
I did not hear the question. So you.
So I'll answer.
So perhaps you can just repeat it.
Yeah, or I'll answer on your behalf. If we can expand a little bit more on what do we mean by different mathematics, okay? So I think I would have two answers for this, Bill. The first one would be, like, as I said, mathematics that we can understand the pandemic, for instance, like I showed about the sigmoid and about graphs and more graphical mathematics. Second, I think it should be more and more in context. And I think it's time to go back to basis in the term of going back to critical mathematics education, to have, you know, political with capital P issues in the classroom. So because democracy must be on the table, otherwise we're gonna have a first or second world war again with maybe even worse results than we had in the last centuries. So those are the two things that I think we should be doing as we see the rapid developments of elections around the world and the lack of mathematical skills that people had to face a president like the one we had, a crazy one, who said there was no need for vaccine, you know, a fascist who just said, you know, who, like Nazi symbols and all that, who were telling people, I think we do need math education to be able to face those kind of arguments of the parallel reality.
Thank you, Marcella, for the answer on the point with three main points. That's very important. And now we move to the second theme. It's about modeling perspective, and we have presenter Stefan Ziller and Johnny Meyer, who each have 5 minutes. And after this 10 minutes, we will have again 10 minutes of discussion. So, Stefan, if you like, you can share your screen.
Thank you, Stanislav. Thank you.
No, we can't hear you, Stefan.
We cannot hear you.
My slides.
Maybe you turn off the camera and only show the slides.
So we spoke about good things, and now we have some challenges. We hope that Stefan will be able to share his screen.
That means we have internet problems, not only, Marcelo, in poorer parts of the world.
I have to say that I'm always happy when that happens, in the so-called first world country. It happened once in a face-to-face conference in Germany. I said, oh, even in Germany, the amphitheater does not have internet everywhere.
Yes, that's the case.
But why don't we go to Johnny and see?
Yes, perhaps we can wait a bit to first start with Johnny Meyer and then move then to Stefan. Perhaps the internet will work then better. Johnny, can you share your screen?
So I have now stopped screen sharing of Stefan. So Johnny, you should be able to do so. Johnny?
Am I sharing my screen?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Uh-oh. This, share, and this.
Okay, and now you only need to make it bigger.
Yes.
Oh, wonderful, great.
Okay, so I have 5 minutes. This is difficult for me because I stopped talking many years ago, 70 years ago, and then when I started talking, I never stopped anymore. I would like to tell you that what I am doing here is a joint project, and this is only part of the group. We have several Brazilian states, and we have participants in 5 different countries. Marina is on the left of the figure, and I am in the middle. I'm the bald guy in the middle. Not as bald as Marcelo, but at least I am, well, I have no hair. And I would like to speak from a perspective of somebody who works with COVID-19 from a professional point of view. Before we had the COVID pandemic in Brazil, we had already started to study it because of the information of this new virus, which worked very rapidly to infect people. And our efforts were in a mathematical sense, but in a mathematical sense, not only using nonlinear differential equations, but also nonlinear difference equations, which can be used by high school students and with spreadsheets. They can do all this. And our first models, which is, I wonder if you can see my mouse, our first models showed a first wave, a second wave, and then a diminishing of the pandemic, which would disappear in 1920, May or June. June would have no more pandemic. This did not happen. This is what our provision was. This, if you can see my mouth and my mouse, and this is what reality was. And we had to work hard using mathematics to be able to create models which included vaccination, different strains, lockdowns, and things like that. There was a great challenge of using mathematics. Now, what is it that we wanted to do? Did we want to predict the past? No, we did not want to predict the past. We wanted to be able to judge sanitary policies undertaken by Brazilian authorities. I'm talking about Brazilian authorities because our situation in Brazil was terrible. And the ministry was trying to force us to use a medicine against ticks because somebody said, well, never mind. But coming back to critical mathematics, mathematics education, I would like to consider that Johan called our attention to the fact that we need educational institutions to change rapidly. That's why I said we're back in step 0. What is our language? I can say this semester I'll be teaching a linear algebra, or I can say with the pandemic, I won't complete the syllabus. Now, what does this mean? This means that the subject is me, and the verb is teach, or do, or complete, or not complete, or finish. And the students are there. The learners do not participate in our teaching language.
Johnny, you 1 minute left.
1 minute. 1 minute. Okay. We need technology, we need teaching, and we need learning. And we do not want to do what Bob Dylan sang. The only thing we knew how to do was to keep on keeping on. No, this has to be changed. And this has to be changed not only in professors, but in institutions. And I would like to stress that from my point of view, I am not much interested in mathematics which are fun, but in mathematics which are necessary to understand and to criticize and to become citizens. And this is something we have to do now. And people do not understand that everything that has been said this webinar says that we cannot go on doing what we have always done. This has to change now.
Thank you, Johnny. I think that is a very good final word. I hope you finished your presentation. And
yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was very interesting to hear your thoughts about it and the research. Stefan Ziller wrote me right now that
I tried again, Stanislav. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So please let's try it by sharing your stream, Stanislav or Gabriele. You have the slides. As I'm not able to share the screen on my notebook at the moment. Is it possible?
Yes, I will do. I hope I can find it. But
that
takes me a minute because I have to open that.
So I can start in the minute when Gabriele is looking for it. So thank you very much for this invitation to give a short introduction into our paper. It was not only written by me, it was also written by Hans-Jürgen Elschenbroich, who is a sort of teacher, a special teacher in Germany, by Katrin Vorhalter, who is a professor at the University of Paderborn, and Gilbert Grefert, who is professor at the University of Münster. And our idea was to write about mathematical modeling of exponential growth as a rich learning environment for mathematics classrooms. Why did we choose this topic? Well, this is a very content-orientated topic, as we have realized during the pandemic times that all people in general in society had difficult problems of realizing what means exponential growth. Also, it is part of the curriculum all over the world. And for this reason, we tried to identify three very important mental models, that's on the next slide, where we have tried to put effort to the topic of exponential growth by finding the main ideas, what should be taught, what should be in the core of teaching exponential growth. What you can see here is that we have identified three ways. Analytically, it means that the proportional to the current stock, well, exponential growth means it's proportional to the current stock. That means the growth by the same factor occurs at the same time unit, which is very important in understanding what means exponential growth. Because even in Germany or in Austria, everyone thought, well, we are rising, and there is no limit, which is not true. Then we had a very, very rich graphical illustration of exponential growth during the pandemic time. So
can I go to the next slide, Stefan? Next slide.
Yes. It's very important to take up this. And as you can see, we have identified some ideas why it is important to teach mathematical modeling at its core. Although politicians around the world are also frequently using this term, and there have been other terms which are important and should be taught as well, like reproduction value, growth rate, growth factor, and the doubling time, which is, of course, very, very interesting in terms of the pandemic. And how do we deal with that in mathematical modeling? Well, therefore, I have found, or we have found, three 4 graphical illustrations, which is on the next slide, Gabriele. Thank you. How could we start? We could start with some ideas from the media, which you can see in the first example. As Marcello has shown, we are able to use digital media in a certain way to remodel, I call it, graphs which are presented in the media. Of course, you have to be aware that the exponential growth is not rising up to unlimited ideas. So you have to be aware that we have a sort of growth that is ending. So the second graphical illustration is very important in terms of thinking further. Not only the exponential idea is important, you also have to address the idea of logistical growth. And if you're aware of all those things, you can stress topics like the R value, which is presented in the 4th paper, and other things like what's the reproduction rate.
Stefan, 1 minute left.
Thank you. Yeah, you can stress all the things in this very complex system so that modeling in the classroom is getting richer and richer, and the content behind is brought to the core. So this is what we have tried to bring in our paper to the audience. And if you're interested in this, you're invited to read the paper, of course, which you maybe have done already, and where you can see that a lot of discussions which were brought to the media and a lot of conclusions as presented here at this last slide can be identified. For us, it's important that the forecasts do indeed serve as a basis for political decisions, making time, and again, usually with the aim of preventing the occurrence of undesirable predictions. And of course, knowledge about possibilities and limitations are very, very important. So you have to stress that in your education, and you can stress that with mathematical modeling. So sorry for the technical issues I had today. I'm at the end of my talk, and yeah, I'm happy to get some questions.
Stefan, thank you very much for these insights. We have some minutes for discussion, so about 5 minutes that we can talk about the presentation. And there is one question in the slide. When do you think exponential growth functions could be taught? From Dragana Martinovic. Usually they are taught in secondary school in conjunction with the logarithmic functions. I'm not sure. I think it's for Stefan, the question.
I would guess so. So in the European context, regularly exponential growth is taught at secondary level 1. And you're right, the logistic growth is in secondary level 2. But I think if you take the ideas of the pandemic serious, it is possible to get some sort of feeling that a growth cannot rise up to the stars. And therefore, there must be some limitations. How far and how fast you go into detail, I'm not sure about that. But as I said before, a lot of the ideas are implemented already at the secondary level 1 level, so that you're able to stress that.
Thank you. The next question by Gabriele Kaiser.
Yeah, thank you very much both for this very interesting talk. And Marcello's just mentioning that exponential growth is taught in secondary schools as well. I have a question to Johnny, because we had a very lively discussion during writing the paper. Because you go mathematically, your models are quite advanced. And the question is to me, yes, how far can we elementarize them so that we can teach them, probably not in upper secondary level, but maybe at the beginning of teacher education. So, Johnny, do you have any ideas which could help me to see that, how I could teach that, for example, for my future teachers at university?
Well, I do. I am full of ideas. Because of my age, I am in a hurry to do things because at 75, I am no longer a teenager. But I would like to say that the logistic equations which Hans showed can also be worked with the difference equations, in which you have a sequence, and these sequences can be treated in high school. And then we can use technology, as Marcelo and Hans showed, to see how the graphs change and how different policies can affect the graph, the behavior of the graph. And so this is very necessary, because I am not speaking, I'm not trying to convince you that mathematical modeling is important. I have as a principle that you cannot teach mathematics without modeling. We use mathematics to model mathematics. We use mathematics to solve mathematics. Mathematics, pure mathematics, is mathematics applied to mathematics. So I don't think we have a question about modeling. I think that what we have to do is, whatever the level, we have to work. The exponential growth might not be taught as an exponential function, but it can be viewed geometrically as a graph and showing this is not going to the stars, but it is still growing very fast. And with this, students which are having their first contact with graphs can criticize political policies, sanitary policies, and the need to work with COVID. And this new virus which appeared in Africa a short time ago, this Marburg virus, which is lethal and is highly transmitted. I'm sorry, Gabrielle. I got carried away, and I think that we need to work with these problems at all levels, most especially at mathematics teachers' initial and final courses.
Thank you, Johnny, for this response. Meanwhile, there's a discussion about how we can start exponential functions, and then we are on the low secondary. The question is whether we can do it already in primary school or even in the preschool. But I think it might be there be some approaches perhaps to do it. Now we have 1 minute, so
I think we have still some time, Stanislav, for answering, because there are a few questions in the chat or comments.
I think there are some comments about how we can start. Are there? And then you comment, I see now, just right now by Igor Kontorovich. 2 questions, please. So you can pick one because of the time, I think. One question was, would you agree that the new math that you are suggesting should come instead of some other math? And the second question, if yes, so which math we should let go of? Very good question. Thank you, Igor.
Who was supposed to answer this?
One of the presenters.
Maybe
I think it's a question for you because you have the experience, Johnny.
Oh, Hans, no, but we all have experience. I think that mathematics, Ubiratan once said that mathematics we teach in school is boring, obsolete, and useless. So this is mathematics we have to throw away. Students learning by heart certain rules of differentiation, of integration. This is done by a computer which has an IQ of 0 and has an infinite patience as long as the battery lasts. We do not have 0 IQ, and we do have a lot more imagination. And so I think we have to go back to discrete mathematics, which can be taught and which can be used in technology. And of course, if we use technology with the graphs, as Marcelo showed us, as Hans showed us, as I showed you, this is really discrete mathematics. And so I think that technology has to change, and we have to accept that technology is going to change the way students learn. What we need to do is that we need our students to learn to know, learn to do, learn to live, and learn to be. And this is what mathematics has to do. And so calculating integral by parts or partial fractions, heaven forbid, is not going to help engineers and doctors and mathematics teachers and physics teachers be better citizens or teach students how to act politically in a changing world.
Thank you very much. I think we can continue the discussion in the chat. And we heard about something about boredom, and I immediately thought about another special issues where emotions were investigated. So there you can read something about it. And now I hand on to Gabriele Kaiser und Mustafa Çevikbaş zum Topic Flipped Classroom Pedagogy.
Okay, so I hope you can see everything. Unfortunately, the people have disappeared, but I hope you can hear me. If not, please let me know. So Mustafa Çevikbaş and myself, we are going this presentation jointly based on our paper in ZDM, Can Flipped Classroom Pedagogy Offer Promising Perspectives for Mathematics Education on Pandemic-Related Issues? A systematic literature review. And as you all know, systematic literature reviews are now becoming more and more popular, and I can already announce that we are publishing a few systematic literature reviews in the coming years. So first of all, what do we mean by flipped classroom? I guess you all know about flipped classroom, and what do we know about the most recent developments in pandemic times? I mean, the pandemic times, and Marcelo and Johan described that very vividly. Of course, in pandemic times, hybrid or even online education really was forced to come into, had to be implemented. So this hybrid education, which combined online and face-to-face learning, had to be implemented very quickly. However, although we have implemented in the last 3 years a lot of hybrid education or only online education, we still don't know really very intensively how hybrid education can be implemented effectively. We know that it can be implemented, but we hardly know whether it is done effectively. So and we are here in this paper introducing the idea or the pedagogical approach of flipped classroom, which is one, and we would like to emphasize that it is only one possibility which has the potential to engage students in mathematics learning. And because we already heard in the last few minutes about the importance of emotional aspects, which will be tackled in the next special issue, in the next webinar of ZDM. This missing engagement of students in mathematics learning is a strong problem of online teaching, although we have heard from Johan that it sometimes is the other way around. So, but flipped classroom does not only has the potential to engage students in mathematics learning, it has the potential to foster cognitively learners. So the question is, how do you define flipped classroom pedagogy? There are different different definitions around. We define flipped classroom as a pedagogical approach in which learning and teaching activities that have traditionally taken place in the classroom setting now take place outside the classroom and vice versa. That means you flip. But on the other hand, this acronym FLIP has another explanation as well, another meaning as well, namely the 4 pillars of FLIP. That means F for flexible environment, flexible learning environment, learning culture. That means you need a specific high learning culture, intentional content develop is extremely important, and professional educator. That means you need a very enthusiastic professional educator who really can run such a flipped classroom. Yes, and what's even interesting that because flipped classroom, and you see it's already from 2014, it's even older, these ideas of flipped classroom pedagogy. After the COVID-19 crisis, there was even introduced a fully online flipped classroom, which even showed some strong positive effects. So we have now here in this paper, which we are going to present very quickly, we have analyzed the following research questions. Which possibilities does flipped classroom pedagogy offer for mathematics education in pandemic times? So very open question. And for that, we have carried out a systematic review, literature review following the PRISMA guidelines, which are currently, I would say, the gold medal or the gold standards for carrying out systematic literature reviews. We have used 4 well-known databases, and we have identified 97 empirical studies, which are included in our literature survey. Because I'm running out of time, you see over here how we have carried out this literature survey very carefully. I now hand over to Mustafa.
Thank you, Gabriele, for the great introduction. And let me continue with our results now. According to reviewed studies, many students and teachers faced critical problems in mathematics education with the onset of the pandemic. And during this pandemic, these reported problems may negatively affect students and teachers from academic, social, and emotional perspectives, as mentioned earlier in the previous presentations. For example, according to the studies, COVID-19 limited most students' opportunities to learn mathematics and caused significant learning loss. And studies also emphasize that the pandemic has restricted professional support for students, especially at home, including scaffolding or teacher feedback, something like that, and student engagement in mathematical talks and in metacognitive activities, and interactions with teachers and peers in the learning process. And additional difficulties during this pandemic were identified by studies such as problems in the use of digital technologies, classroom management, and difficulties in monitoring student learning progress and adapting the shift in teacher-student interactions, especially within online teaching modes, and preparing adequate learning or materials or instructional materials, and being flexible with lesson design and the lack of course, socialization. And in this review paper, we identified a number of opportunities of flipped classroom, both for teachers and students. And these opportunities were grouped under 5 main categories. And most cited opportunities were about individuals' psychological and affective development during the pandemic, followed by their pedagogical, academic, social, and metacognitive development. Yeah, we have detailed these results in our published paper, but due to the time restriction, I only would like to mention the most reported ones here. According to these results, the most frequently reported opportunities of flipped classroom that relate to its positive impact on students' achievement in mathematics and their learning progress, student engagement in the classrooms, and collaboration in group work, social interaction and learning motivation and satisfaction, and finally, personalized learning. Yeah, as mentioned earlier, there were many other opportunities that have been reported by the studies. We have covered them in detail in the paper, but it is important that it is highlighted by studies that flipped classroom may reduce the negative effects of the pandemic on teachers and students thanks to the many opportunities it offers. However, studies also stress that the influence of flipped classroom on students' development largely depends on their self-discipline and self-responsibilities, of course. And in addition to the number of benefits that flipped classroom offers for individuals during the pandemic, a few pitfalls emerge when flipping mathematics classrooms. The most commonly reported pitfalls were startup effort, workload, and time-consuming activities, as well as difficulties in pre-class individual learning, including students' poor preparation for mathematics lessons. So other challenges were about being unfamiliar with flipped classroom pedagogy and struggle to adapt new learning or teaching modes. And these may produce extra mathematical anxiety or stress. And a few studies also reported pitfalls associated with technical issues, such as internet connection problems, as we experienced here, and the need to use technological tools to produce instructional materials.
Mustafa, 1 minute left.
Okay, I'm done. Overall, while designing a flipped classroom model, precautions should be taken by aware of these possible opportunities and pitfalls, which is really important to have successful flipped classroom implementations. Yes, Gabriela, please.
Yes, so thank you very much. I will try to summarize in 1 minute. So, I mean, what you could see in our review and what we could present here, and I hope that you have a chance maybe to look into the papers, is that although there are many pitfalls of flipped classroom identified, the opportunities really predominate. And I think that is I would think it's a very central take-home message, especially the flexible structure of flipped classroom, which its potential to switch really between different instructional modes can really make teaching during pandemic easier, and not only during pandemic, but now after at least we have some kind of pause between the next pandemic maybe coming up very fast. So especially we have found out or could report that online flipped classroom has been found to be very successful, and as successful as traditional flipped classroom in order to promote positive learning outcomes. And what is important, because we have just emphasized several times the emotional and motivational aspects, students with flipped classroom experience were more resilient and more engaged and more satisfied than students without flipped classroom when they had to do some transition from face-to-face learning to online learning. So it is really, from an emotional point of view, it is extremely important to acquaint students already now with some kind of flipped classroom activities. Teachers should collaborate with their colleagues and experts on content creation in order to reduce the workload and in order to keep being motivated. I mean, the main problem is really the high workload for the teachers, and that is really something where joint collaborations are necessary. Finally, flipped classroom pedagogy is not a panacea for pandemic-related problems. We really want to emphasize that as the second last bullet point, because this approach offers many opportunities for mathematics education during pandemic times and during usual times, but of course it has many pitfalls as well, as Mustafa has shown. So to be crisis ready, we should learn from events during pandemic. That means if we are a zebra, being amongst a group of lions, we should be aware that we may be the lunch and not be invited for lunch, but maybe we are the lunch. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Gabriela. Thank you, Mustafa. And Bill would like to ask the first question. Your microphone.
Again, thank you for the presentation. I should confess that I have not read the paper yet. I will. I'm very interested in that question. I'm just wondering, any of the research that you reviewed happened during the pandemic, how it was implemented and some of the problems during the pandemic?
Mustafa, you want to answer?
Yeah, there are various type of studies followed qualitative, quantitative, or mixed method research methodologies. And some of them only focused on the learning and teaching activities during the pandemic, but some others compared before the pandemic and after the during the pandemic. Then, yeah, we found actually similar results in terms of the effects of flipped classroom on students' learning outputs or some aspects of teaching mathematics during pandemic or before the pandemic. But then it is important then that the opportunities of flipped classroom is predominant, its pitfalls. And yeah, we found that many opportunities, we categorize them under 5 main groups, which were psychological and affective development, academic development, social development, metacognitive development, and pedagogical development. But the most cited one, psychological and affective development, as Gabriela mentioned earlier, it's really important because many students may feel isolated during the pandemic and they need some interaction with their peers and teachers, and they of course need some expert support, and they need feedback and scaffolding. Yeah, in terms of this aspect of the pandemic, we found that this result is really important, but of course there's still room to research more to identify the exact effects of flipped classroom on its potential or pitfalls on students' learning outputs or its...
Mustafa, may I add that there are actually in the special issue of ZDM, there are actually a few studies reported which used actually some elements of flipped classroom, because I mean, if you now say we have an online flipped classroom, that means actually the distinction between hybrid learning, online learning, and flipped classroom is getting blurred. So I hope that we could answer your question. I'm seeing 2 questions in the chat.
If you like, Gabriela, you can take one and another you can answer in the chat.
Okay, so I then would like to answer very quickly. I will answer 2 very quickly. Dragana, yes, if students don't arrive prepared, that's a problem, but that is a problem if you have ordinary teaching as well. That's always a problem. And I mean, you have to solve this problem in flipped classroom and in other parts as well. And the question of own, I think that if you have only face-to-face teaching, then it is elements of flipped classroom are missing, because you need to flip. That means you need activities which are taking place out of the classroom, namely the knowledge transfer. So the knowledge development should take place outside of the classroom. That is the most important aspect of flipped classroom, and then complemented by face-to-face. So I hope that I could answer that. Otherwise, simply write to Mustafa and me, and we are happy to do that because we look forward to your PhD. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Gabriela. That was the fast answer, knowing that the time is scarce. So the last topic for today is about teacher education under an international perspective. And the presenters are Bill Atwe and Birinda Kaur. You are welcome to share the screens.
Did it share it? I'm using 2 screens.
Yes, we can see the screen and hear you.
Yeah, I'm using 2 screens here and I get confused between them. Okay, thank you for this opportunity to listen to what other authors are saying and sharing our findings. I will be very brief, obviously, in 10, 15 minutes. Do I have 15 minutes? Is that correct?
Sorry, you have 10 minutes for presentation and then 10
okay.
minutes for discussion.
All right. Okay, thank you. Okay, the title is here. There are two things I want to point out about the title. Like many others, we are interested in the future, but to us, future is in the plural in two ways. One of them is several futures are possible. They're not assured, and it is up to make the futures, but also there is not a unified future for everybody around the world and everybody in the society. There are possible different futures within what actually is achieved. Also, the words responsiveness and responsibility, which come from ethics, although ethics is not in the title of the paper, but it's a very important construct in conceptualizing and implementing. Now, I'm losing something here. Okay. Is this moving these slides?
Yes, we can see the second slide.
Okay. Now, very briefly, the characteristics of this study is, first of all, we focused on mathematics teacher education rather than what's happening in the classrooms. It is an empirical study, and it looked at the disruptions faced by those people in a very, very comprehensive view, from teaching, learning, work condition, policy, support, and so on. Now, some of those themes did not generate significant findings, so we did not discuss them. But in our interviews with the teachers, with the lecturers, professors, we took the comprehensive view. We paid special attention to equity and post-pandemic futures, as I indicated before, and we focused on four larger universities in 4 countries. Actually, we started with 5, and one had to pull out because of the unsettlement in political domain. The theories that we have used, crisis as a disruption, but also an opportunity to try something else, to plan, to reflect about what we are doing, and that action for the future or to cope with the present calls for ethical decisions, and that's where the two concepts, responsiveness and responsibility, come in. Both of them are widely used in ethical debates and literature. There are several people pointed out the difference between them, where responsiveness tend to be immediate reaction to a crisis or a particular need. It may be haphazard and so on, while responsible action is a little bit more critical, reflective about our assumptions, our practices, and planning for long-term responses. The analysis of the data is significant here. I'm not going to talk about the detail, but we use the techniques that are usually taught to teach graphs and data, reading the data, reading between the data, and reading beyond the data. Reading the data and reading between the data, that's a normal or widely used qualitative research techniques, but reading beyond the data, where we question the data and examine the silences, come from the critical theory that we also used in this paper. Now, I'm not going to look at all the findings and give evidence for them, but one of the things that struck us is that all the professors were using the technology, and many of them for the first time, which was a little bit surprising, and not only communication technology, but also technology to teach mathematics for the first time as they were using them. They had training 1 week and then were designing to use it the second thing. The second thing that was interesting is most universities involved had their own learning management systems, but they did not even use it as the main, but use Zoom and Classroom, Google Classroom, and so on. Now, in terms of the pedagogy and the curriculum, there were some attempts at that flipping. We're asking students to read the notes before they come to class. But in the main, the pedagogy as it appeared to us was migration from what usually happens in the classroom to what the new conditions allowed or did not allow. There were taped lectures, there were exercises, there were exams, very, very similar to what the normal teaching of mathematics and mathematics education would be. Now, it's interesting to notice that there's one country, Philippines in particular, that actually reduced the desired outcome to the students. They call them essential or significant learnings or something. So they reduce the curriculum so that teachers and students can cope with that. But many other countries kept the curriculum the same. Assessment, what appeared to us very strongly, is the main center of exams for assessment. There was slight shift in terms of weighting for formative assessment and different ways to deal with cheating, as research has discussed very widely. The equity thing, it was very heartening that almost every university and government had made provisions, not every, but almost every, to give gadgets to students who need them, and sometimes donations by other people. But equity itself remained secondary to the courses that they were involved in. And online teaching remained very secondary and peripheral. The teacher role was still very much in control and deciding what teachers, students need to know, explaining them in lecturing and assessment and so on. Now, concluding remarks, there is an ambivalent the way the teachers and us and the literature talk about the normal. We talked almost in the same paragraph, back to normal. We want the pandemic to finish. Life goes back to normal. But we also talk about the new normal. So there is a sense where new normal, it was the restricted normal during the pandemic, and there might be a danger in just forgetting about that and going to business as usual. Hans and other people have referred to that possibility. The futures are still being formed, they're unpredictable, and they're possibly non-singular. Yet collectively, we are responsible for shaping.
Bill, 1 minute.
I am finished.
Oh, you have finished. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's perfectly in time. And I will open the discussion. And who would like to start?
Berendir,
I think Catherine has the hand up. Not anymore.
I was sending a virtual clap for Bill.
Thank you.
So, Gabriele, have the first question, yeah?
Yes. Bill, thank you very much for this brilliant introduction into the very nice paper, and which gives us really insight in parts of the world, which really are sometimes not so often researched, I have to confess. At least they are often researched, but the insight is not published in many papers. So I was very happy to have this paper. One question, you mentioned that the Philippines have actually decreased the content. So was that the only country? I mean, why? I mean, I've seen that Catherine is here. Maybe she may even explain something. I found it a good idea because at the end of the day, all countries have to limit their contact, but they don't see it openly. They simply do it then.
Bill, you want to expound on on your research on that?
I wish Gladys was here. Gladys, she did the section on the Philippines, and she defended that quite strongly. That in Philippines, the ethos of the country focuses much more, values much more the well-being of the students rather than their knowledge and ability to do and finish the curriculum and so on. So realizing that many families and many students were very stressed, economically, health-wise, socially isolated, and so on, they realize that it's very difficult for teachers and students to demand the full curriculum of the students and the teachers. So they selected outcomes, I think they call them here standards, or competencies, and focused on them. Now, a large section of students in the Philippines did not have access to the technology, while the other countries went completely online. Philippines considered the option of modules, like printed modules, sent to students, both at university and school. The modules idea was abandoned after the first semester at the university, and all classes were online. But in school, it persisted.
Thank you, Bill. So it's quite a combination, perhaps, of the goals of education and also other points, for example, technology. So it's often a complex issue that affect these decisions.
Maybe Catherine wants to add something. I mean, because she comes from...
Yes, I would like to ask you, Catherine.
We reduced what we call learning competencies to the most essential ones, precisely because of what Bill was expressing earlier. There were just too many concerns, and teachers had to decide on the most essential things for students to learn. So that was the reduction that they were talking about in the paper. And that was true for most public schools, at the very least. Yes.
It was outside the scope of the paper to look at which competencies were selected. That is problematic because there might be a tendency of choosing the very basic knowledge and skills competencies at the expense of more higher order thinking skills and so on. But we did not, that was outside our scope.
Thank you. Marcel, I have another question.
Oh, thank you, Bill and Berinder. It's very nice paper. And I would like to connect maybe these results of your paper to part of the seminar. So it seems like that not only the Philippines, but in Brazil too, people are able to reduce to more basic competence or other frameworks, basic topics or basic whatever you want to call it. So maybe that should be a hint for our futures in terms of having more of these basic things and maybe more applied things that make sense after these basic competences to using, for instance, the mathematics of the pandemic, the mathematics of social inequality, all together to these basic things, and teaching students and teachers how to use not only calculator, which we've been talking about 40 years, but maybe how to use Google, how to find lies in fake news. More important thing, how to find mathematical fake news and things like this. And maybe that should be part of our education now for the future in terms of this new math going together with these different social topics. And in particular, I mean, make it popular, the mathematics that the graduate program that Johnny belongs to, which is biomathematics. I think that should become now somehow of a new version. So people should try to understand sigmoids from early and understanding exponential functions from early grades and keep building the other competence, those essential ones, Catherine and Bill, and not all the other ones that used to be really, really important, like integration by parts, as Johnny had mentioned, and that many people abandon their engineer careers, and the others who finished never used double or triple integer in their professional life. Over.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and I think that conversation is very much needed. Teachers around the world have complained that the curriculum is crowded, overburdening with topics and so on. So I think a look at what is actually essential, and that's not necessarily the foundational, the calculations and basic skills, that is a conversation that we have to have.
Thank you. Perhaps the last question. Any other comments or questions?
Oh, maybe Gabrielle, Johan, and you should just give a quick word and close it up.
Okay, then I will start. I mean, first of all, I would like to thank everybody who has attended this webinar. It is something in which we try to make use of new technology. On the other hand, where we really try to raise open questions. I think the question how strongly the pandemic has changed our teaching and will we ever teach as we did before? And I mean, we have received a very clear answer. No, not in this way, but it is a little bit of a danger that we are actually combining the old activities then with new technology, and then it is not brilliantly new. So I think we were very happy to have you here and had the chance to discuss with you these issues. I would like to thank especially the contributors in the chats, which really, who really made a few very interesting contributions. As Stanislav already mentioned, and he will certainly mention it once more, we are going to continue this series of webinar, and I really hope that it helps us to get in touch about a special issue of a journal, and the authors hopefully who were present could receive some feedback, because usually we are writing papers not receiving any feedback. And I think that is actually this kind of webinar series a chance to get in touch between authors and a possible audience. Marcelo.
Yes, perfect. I think Gabrielle has said the most part. I'm very glad being a researcher for 22 years or whatever on online education to have this kind of thing here now, and now putting it together and seeing these different transformations. And I think I make notes here, Gabrielle, of maybe another 2-3 topics for other special issues in the future, Stanislaw, Barinder, and Gabrielle. So we should be thinking about this. So thank you very much for coming. And thanks once more for the collaboration with Johan and Gabrielle. And I really would hope that special issues like ours are good to call attention that we need to pay more and more attention to social inequality in the world. And the struggle for democracy is not something out there. Either we take any hands, either we take care of our forests, not only in Brazil, but elsewhere. or replanting, or we're not going to have a livable world for our grandkids, or if not before.
If I can conclude, thank you first of all, Stanislav, for coping with old fossils like me, and trying to manage us, and you did it very successfully. Thank you very much. But I want to say thank you also to Gabriel and Marcelo. It was quite an experience working with them. And I think if there's one central thought that I have after today and after working on this special issue, is that we should now decide what did we learn that worked through the pandemic regarding mathematics, as well as the way we teach mathematics. Some stuff worked well, other stuff did not work, and we should be part of what happens now in future in mathematics education. Thank you, guys. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Johan, and I now would like to share the screen, so we look forward to another special issue in emotions motivation. And there are some presentations and some topics that come up today. It's about engagement presented by James Middleton. Then we would hear something about attitudes, presentation by Pietro Di Martino and Monica Panero. And Renija will present about comprehension of argumentation in mathematical text. It's about the interest. And of course, there's a survey paper where we indeed found out that is a kind of turn. And one reason is because of pandemic, that emotions, motivations pay much more attention in the research in the last years. So we think that one reason is that these emotional, motivational and engagement issues come up much stronger during the pandemic. Thank you very much for all the presenters, and I hope that we'll see the participants in a month on March 15th.
And we will distribute this announcement via the Cherry Becker list as usual, and everybody who wants to receive it can write to Stanislav or to me.
Yes.
We are very...
And we also feel free to send it to your colleagues in your countries, so more people can participate. It's especially important for the countries who are interesting, who had them not perhaps money for traveling. They can hear and discuss these things in the webinars. Thank you.
Thank you, Stanislav.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.